Thanks, Carly. Hi, everybody. I don't know if you saw your chat box. I just put a little note there for everybody. If you can give your name, your institution, and your location in the chat box, just so that we sort of know where everybody is, sort of a really cool way to do virtual introductions. So hi, my name is Nicole. I am the manager of the Center for Changemaking and Social Innovation at Georgian College. I'm going to start sharing my screen. So today we're going to do something, this is sort of an on-the-fly sort of thing. We're going to be talking a little bit about a research project that I've been involved in around building flourishing enterprises using the Flourishing Business Model Canvas. And this is sort of, it has a sort of a meta conversation around it, but it also has sort of a granular conversation. And these ideas about, you know, as change makers and the things that we're doing, you know, we're designing new things and new ideas and envisioning the future. And what are some of the tools that we use to do these things with? And so there's a lot of visual modeling tools that are out there right now. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So excuse my nervousness. Here it is here. So I'm just going to sort of pull this one up here, if everybody can see that. And I'm going to just go to full screen mode. Can everybody see my screen? Everybody's good? If you, no?
I cannot see it yet.
We cannot see it straight, right? Because I have to hit share. Can everybody see it now?
Not yet. It should be share in the middle of the Zoom box and then select the window you want us to see.
It says screen sharing has failed to start. Please try again later.
Oh, that's not good.
Okay.
Do you have a presentation? Is it, if it's just a PowerPoint, you could send it to me real quick and I can screen share it?
Yeah, that's cool, man.
That's strange. I've not had that happen.
Does this one share?
Oh, that's shared. Do that.
What did you get? This one? Okay, got it.
We see it. Go for it.
All right, everybody's got it? Okay, cool. So this is, I don't know what's going on here, so we'll just play this by ear. So, where are we here? Okay, so basically, I just wanted to read this quote for you today. So this is what this is all about. It's this idea that if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother trying to teach them. Instead, give them a tool in which to lead to new ways of thinking. Right? So it's not focusing on sort of the dissemination of the knowledge, it's sort of learning by doing. And this is Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller to me is, for me, is quintessential. So just to give you a bit of background on me. So I'm a designer. I have been a designer since I was born. I'll always be a designer. I landed in academia for whatever reason. But the bottom line is that I'm interested in interfaces. So when you think about intersections of how humans interact with things, with the world, whether it be computers, whether it be, you know, objects, and the role that this plays really in what we're trying to do as change makers and develop change maker narratives. So the story that I'm about to share and the discussion that we're about to have is hopefully, it's based on some of my master's research. So I took a master's in strategic foresight and innovation at Halmstad University in the last little while. Don't do it, it's crazy. I'm still recovering from it. And I ended up in this fascination with visual business modeling tools. So some of you may be familiar with the business model canvas. Well, this is sort of, there's a lot of these tools out there right now. And so what happened is in this, and now I can't at the time. So basically what this was about was sort of this obsession with dialogic tools to design things with, in particular, flourishing business models. And so this actually was a collaboration between sort of three institutions. We had Halmstad University in Sweden, we had, Halmstad University in Sweden, Ghent University in Belgium, Halmstad University, which where my supervision came out of, and obviously Georgian College, which is my institution. And what this was really about was exploring this notion of flourishing. Okay, sorry guys, this is, you know what, hold on. Give me a second here. Can everybody still see my screen? Yeah, okay, cool. We're gonna do it this way because it's easier. Okay, so this notion of flourishing. So flourishing is this, it comes from sort of two disciplines, one from this idea of ecological economics, and this other one from positive psychology. So it's this idea that people on the planet, we live on an infinite planet, and we use resources on this planet. And as long as we're working in reciprocity, this idea that flourishing individuals can build flourishing communities, which can build flourishing economies, and that they're all interchangeable. And that this idea that we live on a continuum between, not just surviving, but this idea of flourishing. And so when we ask this concept of flourishing, it sounds pretty awesome, but, if we can't get into that, we're going to need some tools and resources to do that with. So enter, wow. Okay, so much for preparing. So enter this idea of the Flourishing Business Model Canvas. So this canvas was created based upon Osterwalder's business model canvas. So this actually challenged the notion of Osterwalder's work, which is incredibly phenomenal, and it ushered in a new era in which organizations and institutions could design and model out enterprises. So it sort of, challenged the traditional business plan and started to say, how could we use visual thinking and sort of work through and design models? So an abstraction of building that model. So what happened is Anthony Upward, through his master's thesis way back in sort of 2013, sort of started to look at, okay, sort of building a business with just a profit lens is not conducive to understanding its, existence in the entire sort of ecosystem of society and the planet. Recognizing that, businesses operate through this idea where they take from the planet, they make, and then they provide value, and it's sort of very linear. But this recognition that businesses of the future and the things that we're doing in the future have to take into sort of the natural science of our recognition that we live on a planet with finite resources. We have social structures, and we have these constructs that we build, and that we have to be working in tandem. So this is a tool that was developed, an ontology was built, and this was a tool that was developed to sort of say, how might we model, or how might we design sort of new enterprises that take into consideration the economic viability of both sort of the economy, social, and the environment, and that we're sort of working together. So this was sort of a really great tool. So this has been adopted. There's 1,700 members in this sort of community that sort of work in this context. There's over 223 people working or groups that are specifically working with this canvas around the world. These include things like Innovation Norway. The UN is starting to look at using this canvas and this tool, and there's a huge global network of people that are sort of working in this context. So as part of my master's thesis, I decided I'd tackle the visual interface of this because there were some interesting things that were happening. Number one, there were some meta questions that I was starting to ask around design of institutions and this idea of human scale and human centeredness. And, how might we sort of in the business world or sort of in the organizational world, how might we look at, putting systemic design and life-centered perspectives in strategy? So recognizing that managers and people and institutions are coming together to collaborate, and they're trying to design businesses or how things should function either in departments or organizationally, and that they're working sort of in these sort of reductive or reductionist systems, but they're also individuals, and they're trying to, in their brain, they're trying to model out some of these sort of things. So there's a few things when you're using these tools that there was three sort of areas that I saw were really important. Number one, from an interaction perspective, graphic interfaces, language, and cognitive ability. So the ability for people to understand how to use the tool and how to use the concepts and thus model. So what we ended up with was people that were working in this space, they started to recognize, so these were my two partners, so Maya and Francesca from Ghent and Halmstad were already working with this tool with students, and they were finding some common themes. So we saw these as sort of barriers to using this brilliant tool and sort of using it to teach flourishing and sustainability in sort of a master's levels programs, but also in other things. So this idea that, and this was sort of, these were sort of universal, that these themes that sort of the graphic interface that you saw, people struggled with it. Language was another big barrier. And this idea that because the key to this tool is that you had to work in 3 dimensions. So you had to work both in economy, social, and environment, and you had to model businesses processes that could take those into context. This was sort of this was a sort of a tough go for a lot of the groups. So these are some universal themes. So we started to tackle this, and this is sort of the new canvas. So this was the first iteration. So we looked at the graphic interface. And so what we did is we took some, what we call interaction design, HCI, so human computer interaction principles. And we started to apply this through what we call the research through design methodology. So we started to look at not only the visuals, but also the interaction that people had to this visual. So as you can see, this changed. Then what we did is we designed these little cards. And what these cards were is when we were talking about how to interact in the systems was this idea that you could ask a question. So it's like a game. So we asked a question, and then to answer that question, what you had to do is you had to model the pieces out using these cards. And then what you did is you parked them back onto this canvas. Okay, so this was sort of the concept that we played with. And so then what we did, so here's the cards in action, it was an ability to reduce sort of this idea of the cognitive load that you had to hold all these things in your head. So for instance, you can see these colored cards here. You know, the blue is the economy, the green is the environment, and the yellow is society, and this idea that you could figure out what the relationships are. So what was the economic value? What was the relationship to an economic goal to a social goal? And how did they relate to each other? And so you could start to move these around in this sort of hexagon format. Because it's flourishing, we took this idea of the hive or bees and this idea of sort of working through that. And then what we did is we tested it. And we sent this to, so this is actually the first test that went out with the new canvas and the cards, and this is in Ghent in Belgium. And so these are industrial design students who had never seen a canvas, never seen a business model before. And we sort of went through this and sort of their ability to start to play around with these cards and what they were doing. And so what we had found is Francesca, who is an industrial designer by trade and who's the facilitator, started to notice that there was a change in how collaboration happened around this canvas. The next thing, and so the next thing we did is, so with that knowledge, we took, we expanded this, and we did a research project where we gave in Halmstad, Sweden, we gave students a canvas and a set of cards. We gave them only the cards, and then what we did is we gave them the canvas with the questions, okay? And we sent them out, so we sent 3 different groups, sort of 3 different contexts out to model. What we started to find was people, so how did they work? Well, traditional. This was sort of, they only had the canvas. And so the sticky notes were, they were okay. They were, you know, sort of minor relationships. This is a group that just had the cards, and they went crazy. And the infinite amount of relationships that they found was nuts. And so what that led us to do was we actually took a 3rd iteration and we created this canvas, because we realized that working with the canvas and the cards, you know, solicited, you know, sort of different sort of methods. And so then we realized that people were really gravitating to the cards and the depth of the modeling that they were getting, and that the canvas almost became a parking lot. So what we decided to do is we decided to just, you know, use the visual interface and create this canvas, okay, and this system. And then we took it to Georgian College in February, and we did the same thing. And you can see here, so these pictures here, you can see where on the table where they're really using the cards and they're really getting into conversation, and then they're moving it over into sort of a parking lot. So as you can see on the canvas there, you know, here's sort of, they're really starting to dig deep into these relationships and modeling out different scenarios that could happen. And then they're parking them on the canvas. And you can see that the amount of stuff that is now coming onto the canvas is huge. So they're coming up to with sort of many ideas on how they're going to model, and they're parking it through. Then the great idea of that is what they can do is they can tell a story now across the canvas, so they can actually start to choose and strip away, you know, sort of the ideas that they're modeling. And so what they're doing is they're modeling a complete picture of what a flourishing enterprise would look like, with connectivity to profit, community, and environment, strong in terms of the business process. And then so some of their facility organizations, I won't go through this, because what I'm going to do now is I was going to send in the chat box here, so I'm going to get out of the screen share. So at this point, are there any questions before we move into something way more exciting than what I just blathered through on this? Anybody? How do we join or become part of this global now? I'm very, very interested in respect. Oh, I'm glad you asked that, Houston. So I'm going to, there's a couple things I'm going to do right now in the chat before we move on. So the next thing we're going to do is, so how many people, there you go. There you go, there's all your links. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move into something called Mural. And I'm going to show you, so you asked, so we're in a we're in a sort of a pandemic world now. And so as you saw that these, in this research project, there was a lot of collaboration that was face-to-face. I'm not sure if anybody got nervous now because of the social distancing that totally doesn't follow social distancing rules. So one of the questions that I asked is, in this sort of process where we have to collaboratively monitor, and dialogue is very, very important in terms of this modeling process and the visual design process, is how might we now translate that into a virtual environment and walk through that same process. So I'm going to show you what this sort of the fourth iteration of sort of what this is doing. And again, I'd love to have conversations about sort of the ontology and everything of this design. This is more just really talking about the importance of design and sort of using these tools. I'm going to share with you in here right now as a link, and I want you to click on this. This will take you to something called Mural. And this will bring you into a world of where the canvas is now being built. So just click on that. You should not have to register or anything like that. You can click on it and jump in, and everybody can unmute their mics now if they want, if they have any questions or anything like that. And see how they're doing. And this is just sort of an opportunity to sort of share, and you can actually come in and check out the canvas and zoom in and out. This mural is about 80% done, but you can actually start to go in, click, and you can see this tool sort of in its context, and that sort of thing. So any questions? Happy to take them all. Did anybody understand anything I said? And going through that.
So Nicole, fascinating, because we have used the traditional business canvas model, and the program, later on we'll connect about the program I presented yesterday and what we do. And I'm really intrigued by this because I do follow the triple bottom line. And this fits right in there.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to, first I tried to click on that link, but it's not taking me anywhere.
It's not taking you anywhere? Okay, let me try if I get you another one. Does anybody else have any issues?
No, nothing is happening.
Nothing is happening?
Right.
This platform crashed last night across the world. So I'm hoping, you know what, maybe I'll screen share this then.
Yeah, Nicole, it looks like comments are saying that it's either not working or just
right.
slowly loading.
Right.
Okay.
It's
Great. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a bummer. So if you can get in, great. It looks like, oops, here we go. Looks like we're just loading. So this is the technical issue. So the triple bottom line. So let's, so the Flourishing Canvas is based upon something called a try-profit blend. So with the triple bottom line being, silos, right? So you've got people, planet, profit. So Flourishing looks at what we call a blended model, so a try-profit. And it doesn't really exist empirically yet. It sort of exists in sort of the understanding of story, but in terms of how we look at accounting. So there's an entire movement out there that's attached to this group called a Reporting 3.0 or R3. And they're actually developing blueprints that sort of take into consideration this try-profit blended model of measurement. Why don't we open up the floor for the short period of time that we have left? And, in terms of some of the things that you guys are doing around change making and the concept of flourishing and the triple bottom line and the things that you're working on, where are you finding sort of that interface? So this was really about an exploration into design and sort of understanding that there's human factors, there's cognitive abilities for people to understand very abstract concepts. So things like change making is a very abstract concept. And so the tools that we use in change making, like the business model canvas, we might not call it a change making tool, but essentially it has the potential to create new ideas and new realities and create dialogue for those. So maybe we can open it up to sharing some of the tools and stuff that you're using, and how are people integrating with these tools that you're using, or just in general with trying to understand the abstract and the role that as change makers we're trying to do to sort of help them move through that. See if we...
Nicole, I also wanted to, I posted in the chat, will we be able to get the slides that you shared with us?
Yeah, so I can send those slides to everybody as well too, and everything is actually in there. I also too if you went to the registration list, there's also a list of all the references, so all the literature that was a part of this research. So you can actually go through and you can pick out the literature related to flourishing and interaction design as well. So you can pull all that out as well.
Okay. Yeah, and then I did ask, you know, how do we become part of this global community that you said?
Yeah, so I posted the links into the chat box. So these are all the links. So you can go to the flourishingbusiness.org. There's also OCAD University, where this group is sort of housed out of globally, and also the wiki, where all the conversations are happening around flourishing. So these are all the global conversations that people are having around this context.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So how many of you are familiar or have used the business model tool, like Osterwalder's Canvas? 1, 2, 3. Yes. And so when you were working in the Osterwalder Canvas, you know, how did you find it when you first used it? What were some of the feelings that you had, or did you get a facilitator to walk you through it, or did you just get a piece of paper that sat there on the table and you're like, this is what you use? What were some of people's experiences around that? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I've been doing this this show program this model platform, this educational model that I developed. Okay, so it has been in existence for 5 years now, and we work with under-resourced entrepreneurs. Okay, and we've been using different business models, templates, and so on. And then when we use the Canvas, this was me, and then when we I thought, oh boy, this was something great that I'd come across, And then when we gave it to the under-resourced entrepreneurs, where we are helping them, coach them to go walk through a business plan, boy, it wasn't that intuitive at all.
Not intuitive?
It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. So we learned that, you know, it's like learning by doing. So as a faculty member, I learned that it isn't as intuitive as they make it to be.
Yeah. So that's a really good, so one of the things that we found in the research that we were working through was, so a lot of the literature around visual design tools talks about you actually need a facilitator. Because what we're doing is, what happens is you've got this tool that was built with this perception or this mindset or this set of knowledge. So I have this set of knowledge, I'm going to design a tool from understanding how this knowledge is supposed to work. So what happens is managers and organizations or entrepreneurs, they actually have to learn this context, and then they have to learn how to use this tool. So the cognitive overload when you're putting a visual design tool down for people to look at is they're learning two things at once. Not only are they learning how to think visually, which we're not trained to do, but they're also having to learn a new discipline, right? So these barriers, so what happens is we lose not only through the language, but also the intuitiveness. So understanding how, and so the most amplified version of this right now, as I can give you, is what's happening with everybody having to go online. The cognitive overload of people having to understand user interfaces that are connected to our hands through mouses and not having the ability to navigate through an interface online. Not only they're having to learn how to put their process online, but they're also having to learn the process by which processes go online. And that's the same thing that happens when we use these visual tools, is we have to understand, you know, what the process is that we're designing the tool to get the process out for, but also how to use the tool in that process. So, you know, it's as much about the tool as the interaction that we develop around teaching the tool. And so, you know, part of our research was to look at not only the visual interface and how do we make it more intuitive by understanding sort of cognitive, but also understanding the load that's on people to understand all these concepts at once, and then the facilitation process that we have to go through to iterate, right? Anyway, so that, I don't know if that helps, but that's some of the things that, you know, it's a design problem.
Right. No, it really helps. You said it very well. Because dealing with that many, I deal with under-resourced entrepreneurs, like about 115 to 120 per semester. And these are all different, and then you're trying to walk them through and saying, oh, it's a challenge. And so you articulated it very well.
Yeah. So, yeah, so there really
any help that I can get, anything that I can use to make this process easier.
Yeah, so this was where we had those hexagon cards. So so the physicality of those hex cards was this ability for them to physically move, so and turn it into a game. And so I think what happens is in some of the research that we're looking at, and as we look at youth, or even like when you think about play, right? Even it doesn't matter where you're from, right? You can be in sort of an under-resourced area and you can have a soccer ball and you can learn to play, or you can be here like my son who plays video games all the time. This concept of play articulated into different environments, we have to translate that into the tools we use to design for change making. We have to figure out a way to make change making about play and about a game, so that those shifts, and that we can visualize the shifts we want to move into. So when you're thinking about teaching the business model canvas, if you put that down, how does that become a game, right? And what tools and things can we use to play and model and recognize it's not about getting it right the first time, and that everything we do in terms of modeling is just a draft, right? It's just a draft. And this idea that we're going to create this finite product with these tools that we're building, like canvases and all this kind of stuff, it's an impossible ask, because the day that I started the tool, like the time that I started the tool to the time that I finished the tool, so many things have changed, not only in how my perception of the world works, not only the things that I know, but the things that I've modeled. So. Yes, sorry.
We have a question that was sent in.
Okay.
It was sent to me privately, so you can't see it. It says, considering flourishing is built on reciprocity, I'm assuming there's an inherent fluidity with this, as each piece then informs or influences the other in a circular fashion. So the question is, does the canvas capture a moment, or is it meant to capture a future possibility?
So both. It's really up to you to decide how to use the tool. So what we do, and if we could have gotten into this platform, one of the first things we ask is, when do you want this model to take place, right? So do you want it today and then in the moment, or 5 minutes from now, or do you want it 5 years from now, right? And so how it changes is it's the determination of the principles that you think you need in the future versus the principles you think to model with in now. So organizations currently have mission and vision statements. That's the now, right? But if they want to get to flourishing in this reciprocity, this circular set, do the values we have in the moment, are they going to get us to where we need to go? And should we be contextualizing the principles and the roadmap for the future? So to answer your question, yes, but most organizations do not have reciprocity necessarily built into their models as of yet.
Can I make a question?
Yeah.
Thank you. I have been using a tool called Buckminster. That is also a platform website. I find this platform very useful because same thing, I can tag with colors, and that makes easier the connection between the process and people. My question is, what I saw on your presentation, it was like a cards, right? So different color cards. So I can find a canvas in the market with that kind of cards to work in a group with people, or I can create those cards by my own.
So yes. So the two things. So the canvas was built on an ontology. So kind of like a structure of based upon science. So the cards have not necessarily been released to the public yet, but they're an open source. So they're an open source card and you can get access to those cards. And then what you have to do is you have to cut them out, and it's a real pain in the butt to cut all the hexagon cards out. But so one of the next, but yeah, so what you can just do though is you could use just different colored sticky notes. And the only reason they're in a hexagon shape is because you can have you can have up to 6 relationships on each side, right? But yes, so you can actually create them yourselves, but they're already sort of created, and sort of this hasn't necessarily been released yet. Yeah. I don't know, did that answer your question?
Perfectly.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, but reach out to me and I can help you if you're interested. Yeah. Okay. How are we doing? Sorry. Any other questions, or I guess we got to go. You guys got other sessions to go to, other exciting things to do, other showcasing to do. So, so cool. So anyways, I just want to thank you guys for, sorry about the technical glitch. Obviously didn't roll out completely the way that I had planned. I wanted to get you guys in the mural. Mural was obviously having some issues last night. But what I'll do is I can send out a link to the mural once everything works. And you guys can feel free to reach out. And if you guys are interested in actually doing a workshop or playing around with it, just let me know and we can make that happen. So cool.
All right.
Okay.
This is great.
Okay.
Well, we can hang out if anybody has questions. But then otherwise, great session. Thank you guys for joining.